I'd like to approach Dain on this because he knows how to market. And you need to know how to market to get to that investment point. So Dain, can you give us some pointers?
Well, first of all, I think being out there as much as possible and confidence. I think setting an expectation early in your marketing is good, and understanding what your target is. I think that's one of the main goals that we have in all of our businesses, is to essentially narrow down and focus into a very targeted market group and say this is what we're actually looking for and this is the type of expectations we would like to get, and then kind of narrow it down from there. Because like I said, I mean, I think I agree with the fact that there's that Mankato kind of sucks. So in that regard, so just say stuff off the cuff, So it has been, it shows, and it shows in data. It's not like I'm just saying stuff. There's data that proves that Mankato is not an angel investing community. It just isn't. So how do we change that? I think it's by marketing. I think it's by understanding that the risks have reward, there's upside, and of course the risks need to be weighed, and there needs to be a calculated approach with an analysis that is involved in a market approach that makes sense. Once you get to that point, people's wallets open up, and they have in your neck of the woods, obviously, which is super duper cool, and the impact it's made down there is so viable and could be such a blessing in this area. We just need to get there. And I think that's what we're doing here today. And so from a market perspective, Helen, I just want to see people understand that the risks they're everywhere in anything that you do. If you buy a house, that's a risk. And people do that every day without even thinking about it, right, Lisa? I mean, that's not even a thing. Like, you just like, I'll buy a house today. It's a similar deal. So that's all I have to say about that.
I just have one quick thing to add on to that, and I think it's important if you are an angel investor and you want to seek out, you want to be heard or you want to be known as a place that people can come to. I think this room right here, the Small Business Development Association, lenders in your community, we are in touch with small business owners and startups all the time, and so if you want to be known, I guess, in the community as a source to look to. If we have your contact information, if the Small Business Development or those places, they can guide those people to you to have those discussions, and as they mentioned, see if it's a good fit. Go through that vetting process. Yes.
Spencer, are there financial metrics you look at, particularly rates of return or hurdle rates when you run the numbers? Can you talk about a couple of those?
Yeah, so our model is to invest in seed stage or very early stage startups, which basically means we're usually investing in kind of that first round of capital that ever goes into a company. It's the founder with the idea or the founder with the idea with a prototype. That's kind of where we come in. And so while probably almost every other venture capitalist that you would get on this panel would love to dive into the financial metrics of how we're building our portfolio. I'm just going to level with you all and say that at the early and seed stage, your financial projections are they're just like nothing. You put them together because the investor is going to ask for them, and then the investor says, okay, well, this could be a big opportunity, or I don't believe that this is a big opportunity, and that's like the total weight that goes into those. There's, to me, at investing in the early stages of a company is mostly about the team or the founder, the management behind this, and then next, it's a toss-up. Is it the idea or the product or solution and what problem it's solving? Or is it the total market size? And I tend to actually side with the total market size being more important, because a lot of times when we invest in an early stage startup, it ends up looking totally different a few years down the road. And so if the market and the opportunity is big enough, we hope that there's kind of some wiggle room where they can find, where if you have a good enough founder and team, they can kind of wiggle into a good business. So maybe not what you'd expect to hear, and especially when you talk about like preparing that business plan to go out and raise money, that process has really changed over time, and we see a lot less business plans, because I think internally everybody knew that there's so many assumptions that go into that, modeling out your next 10 years of your life, and what could happen is really a lot of guesswork. And so that's shifted to where we're seeing like the business model canvas that's taught in a lot of universities now, and a pitch deck, and a founder that really understands their market, the problem, and how they're going to solve it.
I could just piggyback on that, on the metrics. So everything would be some function of the risk versus the reward. So, and everybody's going to have a little different way of calculating that and understanding that. So the best angel investors, the ones that I've seen, are the ones that like understand, they either understand this is a really like, smart person, team, like they're going to figure it out, and I'm going to help them figure it out, because that first business plan is just a guess. Any of the financial projections are a guess. So you're doing a lot of exploring, iterating, evolving as you go. So it's finding somebody that's in for that part of the creative process. So it's a very different mindset and decision-making process than the usual like business decision-making, where it's, yes, no, right, wrong, go, no, go. This is at the early like creative seed of it. So it's going to evolve a lot. It's going to change completely. You asked before, how did we do it? All of our investors are people that come from either agriculture or trading. None of them probably would have identified as an angel investor ahead of time, but they're ones that, through my network and our team's network that we've connected with, that can say, ooh, I see a need for this. Like, I've either experienced it or I know people that have this, so I see this as something, and all of them are directly involved in some way, shape, or form with our business. So that's where the angel investor can help de-risk the business just by their presence, either putting in the money, introducing to contacts, picking up some of the workload instead of doing the armchair quarterback thing, like you should do this, you should do this. It's like, ooh, that needs doing, I'm gonna help you do that. That sort of thing.
Well, I think vetting, and I see Scott's got something on his brain which I'd love to hear about.
Anything could happen.
Yeah. Well, let's just let you go ahead first, and then I'll ask.
I was just going to maybe direct a comment to Spencer. I'm really kind of envious, a little aggravated. We've got to reach down to Iowa to get ag venture component, here, and maybe Sam Ziegler, Green Seam, has all of these ag connections, and maybe missing within the ag community specifically is the ag venture component. And I don't know if Sam could speak to that, or Spencer, a little more history on how Ag Ventures started, and Iowa exclusive, or how far is your reach?
Yeah, so we invest in companies all over the country. We do try to say that we want to invest in the Midwest, but we're kind of like pushing that envelope all the time, and which I think is actually really important, at least for us, and to try to maximize investment returns. Because if we care about rural communities, which is core to kind of our philosophy and our beliefs, and we believe that a good idea can come from anywhere, then we probably have to believe that it can come from Seattle or it can come from Frost, Minnesota. So we try not to limit ourselves there, but really kind of the genesis of this organization was really just like about 3 farmers that really cared about trying to take some kind of action to control their future. And this was at a time back in the late 90s when corn prices were depressed, farm profitability was very low. The same story could be said today, which is a little bit disheartening because we've been working hard at this for 20 years now. So really these guys got together, they asked themselves, what can we do about this oversupply and low demand on corn in north central Iowa? And they developed an ethanol project that it involved bringing in some new technology. It's kind of second generation technology for ethanol plants. They put together a pretty big project, ran across the countryside and raised money from their friends and neighbors to make it happen. And they built that ethanol plant and operated it for a couple years. Another company came along and said, hey, we want to give you a pile of cash and some stock in our company for this project that you built. And they said, okay. That acquiring company then went public, and all of a sudden we had 1,000 families in kind of north central Iowa and southern Minnesota that had a really good experience investing in a private deal. A handful of those people continued on, developed another project, went really well, and by that time we had, with a couple projects under our belt, we were able to kind of formalize this group that would continue looking at opportunities. And now today the opportunities have evolved a little bit, and we're doing different projects. I don't think we could do an ethanol plant today. And so instead we're investing in kind of this ag tech movement with, but again, it's always with, for us, it's always with that mission to impact farmer profitability. And it just so happens that farmers are kind of really underrated business people, in my opinion. They understand, they've got kind of they're really good at making decisions, even if part of it's intuition, because they have to manage pretty big businesses a lot of times. And I think actually Lisa could verify that even our small businesses that are established in communities are bigger than a lot of people would expect. And so that's kind of a captive audience for assembling a group that understands the risks of starting something new and may be willing to put some capital into that.
Lisa, I have a question.
Yes.
Hi, my name is Reverend Amy Oberly. I'm part of a nonprofit here in town, and my sister and I have a company called the Sisters Rising. And as a young entrepreneur, I think one of the great things is that we are always hungry for learning. We have many mentors, and we are always searching for more material to read on. So can you guys kind of talk about like maybe who your mentors are or some great resources we can go to learn a little more?
That's great. Can you start with you, Dain?
Sure. I mean, my number one mentor is my father. Kurt Fisher was started some real estate stuff here in Mankato in the 70s and grew that over the years and has done quite well. And actually, he was somewhat involved initially in an initial campaign with those farmers to build an ethanol plant. He was the developer. And this was in the early 90s. And then legislature changed last minute, and the whole project fell through after they had gotten it all ready to go, like shovel ready. And then I think it got picked back up somehow, and I don't know what happened after that. I don't know what the timeline is, but I just know that was part of it. So he's been a huge mentor, but there's mentors in this room. I mean, even Scott Wiley has been a mentor to me and an inspiration to me. But there's people, all throughout my history that I feel like you can take it. I always think about it as you take what you want and you leave the rest. And I think it's up to your intuition to understand who you want to surround yourself with. But the people in the room that probably care the most and are the most passionate about how you're doing, those are the people I gravitated to.
Janie?
Yeah, I think building on that, so my parents having the farm, being a part of that business around the dinner table conversations, and the reason we were able to get started with Croptomize is I have a good relationship with the banker that has worked with us on the farm for many years. So I think we've got one on the panel, and there's some Brazilian bankers and stuff here that they can be a great resource for helping you think through your financials, just to make sure you're asking the right questions. The Kaufman Foundation that has 1 Million Cups has tons of information on there. A number of the universities and SBDC has some great resources, business consultants and stuff. So yeah, Google is a great thing.
Google knows everything.
Google mentor. That could be a thing.
Yeah. So just to jump back to Dain's comment a little bit ago, it's so potentially back in the early 90s, there was a group of people that really cared about doing something with farmers, just like we did, and there was just a small blip in that history or timeline, and you guys potentially could have had the same thing that we have in north central Iowa. So it gives you kind of the idea that getting together a group of people that really care about the future of your community can make a big difference. And that almost happened, but instead, now you've got this group that's here. So there you go. That's your potential future timeline for doing something really cool. And when it comes to mentors or information or books, so there's a lot of good like mentors and people that have helped along the way. I'm also a farmer myself, and so I've got like the family that I have looked to, and they've been supportive and everything. But I actually have like really enjoyed podcasts. So you can dive into the weeds of like with experts in these weird narrow areas that you're interested in. So for me, I really like agriculture and like the regenerative farming thing and startups and there's just like all the information I could ever want out there on Apple Podcasts. So that's where I've been liking to get my information, and then there's lots of good books too.
And also, Janie mentioned bankers being a good resource. Would you agree with that?
I would agree with that. You know, and we're connected in the community to lots of different people, lots of different organizations. And for me, what's important to me is getting out and getting involved in your community. So a mentor does not have to be, you know, this hidden thing that you're searching high and low for. Being involved in organizations that are important to you and important to the communities that you're in and you're supporting. There are people everywhere who are just as passionate as you are about helping people succeed and helping new organizations grow. So.
Yes, Sam.
I want to have a comment and a question to see if you guys agree with this, but one of the things I think we have a challenge with in rural Minnesota or even in Midwest is the ability to allow somebody to fail and to come back with another idea, because not all these ideas, it might not be the right time, might be the perfect idea, but it might be ahead of its time or behind, but allowing people to fail, to come back again and say, hey, I got a new idea, because some people are really good at ideas. And I think the culture in the Midwest is very conservative in the way of, oh, they had something, watch out. And I think we got to get over that a little bit and help people get back on their feet, because they could have a great idea. And I think this is, if you look at the Silicon Valley or some of these other places in the U.S., there's failures constantly, or learning moments better than considered a failure. And I think that's one thing that Green Team is trying to figure out how to do, is how do we have more events like this with a conversation around ag, because it's our biggest industry, and then allow those connections to happen and failures or learning moments to happen. And I don't know if you guys have thoughts about those moments.
Sam, I'll jump right in because I'm like a walking failure and I love that. Do you have a thing around here, some kind of thing? I can do a skitmatic.
Right there.
Okay, so this comes down to Mogwai, because we're like a year and a half ago, I started a co-working space with Stephanie, who is the director of Mogwai and this building, and we thought that this was our plan. Our plan was to have, and I'll go really fast on this because I don't want to take up the whole thing, but our plan was that we have an opportunity zone right here, and we haven't even talked about that yet, but there's an opportunity zone right here. So angel investors can look at, any investor can look at capital gains that they are taking from the stock market or from a piece of property that they sold, or any type of capital gain. And the interesting part is here we have an LLC. Let's see if we can get this market to work good. We have an LLC here that's a startup. And in that startup, it's worth $0 at that moment. And then someone comes in and adds 100 grand to that startup. Like, what would you do with 100 grand, right? I'm going to start my business. Now you take that and you run a timeline from here to here, and we have 2020 to 2026, and we have this thing called an opportunity zone. And this is interesting because this is the original basis, gets an injection, this is the new basis. So we're at 100 grand right here. And when we go down this line and we hit this spot and we can sell, and then we can sell this business for $1 million. How many zeros do I got? That many? All I want you guys to know about Opportunity Zone is that in an LLC, the appreciation is 100% forgiven. So that it's not, I'm not talking about like a little bit or 10%, which I know you've heard of. That's in real property. LLCs or any corporation that's partnership filed in an opportunity zone, which is in a physical place, is looking at the basis to this is 900,000. That's a non-taxable gain, 100%. You guys want to play with those numbers for a while, it's really fun. You can have a lot of fun with that, because I don't know Silicon Valley, if they have any opportunities, I bet they didn't make an opportunity zone around Silicon Valley. Because that would be, there's no need for spurring economic growth. But this is a bipartisan program that really is intended to take investment groups, investment organizations, investors, angel investors, any kind of, and you can even finance these. You can even finance these. You can take gains. And maybe I'm going too long here, but you're the moderator. You gotta tell me what to do. But if you take these gains and you can leverage them into a taller investment, that's just fine. And you know what just happened? 0.5% just dropped off. So now you can take an investment that's the depreciation's almost over. You can pick that investment up, sell it, take your gains, roll it in, defer all the gain on that for 6 years, appreciate the value, and pay no taxes on your real estate gain or whatever gain you had, even stocks.
Sounds
So
too good to be true.
it's pretty cool. Yeah, it's almost illegal. It seems illegal, but it's not. So, but the LLC thing is the coolest part, and that's what we're all here to talk about today, is how do we invest in our entrepreneurs, and how do we invest in different startup businesses. This is just a tool, and everyone here has tools.
And
Another
Dain,
thing
it's important to note, it hasn't come out yet, but last week, Dee designated Minnesota State University Mankato and this building as the regional hub for innovation and entrepreneurship through a grant that's going to be collaborative between strategic partnerships, Small Business Development Center, Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship, and helps to fuel entrepreneurship. So more.
That's a big step in the right direction. That's a huge, in fact, that's almost like the momentum of that could be huge.
And one of 6 hubs, and we are the hub for Southwest Minnesota.
Excellent, great job.
Great, yeah. I think it's 9:30, the time to.
Yeah, well, time to wrap up. I just wanted to make a note that Minnesota Cup opens up applications on March 16th. And it's open to students and to community members like Janie's business or your businesses. And they have $30,000 to $50,000 prizes that they're giving away for the Twin Cities. And we're underrepresented here in Mankato, so I'd encourage you to check out Minnesota Cup. It's the largest statewide competition in the country. You provide mentoring, and then you have prize money that could help you get to the next stage so you can talk to the investors.
Let's thank our panelists today.